So can you talk to me about the benefits of rotating coaches?
Yeah,
You're
that,
discussing that a little bit, and I'm very interested in this.
so we do it on both my summer team, GPS, Greater Phillipsburg Swimming, and also the NEYS, Nazareth Eastern Y Swimming. And there are two basic models for when you think about how to organize your coaching staff. The first model is what I think happens with probably the vast majority of swim teams and swim clubs, which is they assign a coach per age group or per ability level. So, for example, you know, Coach John might be the 8 and under coach, and Coach Marion might be the 9-10 coach, and Coach Todd might be the A group coach with the Junior Olympic qualifiers, and head coach Lou might be, just the national level qualifiers, right? And so that's one way to do it. But the other way to do it is what we do, which is rotational coaching. So every coach, and you can break it up in different ways, either by every day or every few days or at least once a week. They rotate from a group to group, from training cohort to training cohort. So whether you divide it up by age only, or you divide it up by ability only, or what we do is we sort of have a range of like maybe 9 to 12-year-olds in this ability level, and then we might have another range from like 12 to or maybe 11 to 14-year-olds in this ability level. So however you divide it up, you rotate your coaches, and even within each group. So you might, let's say, one coach might spend 2 days working with this ability group, and then the next 2 days working with that ability group, and the next 2 days working with a different ability group or age group. But even within that subgroup, they should rotate what lanes they coach. So you might have lanes 1 to 3 for this group, this subgroup. So you're going to coach that subgroup, and then for the 2 or 3 days you're there, rotate what lane you do each day. And so if you have a large staff, that's easy to do. If you have a small staff, it's harder to do, but it's still doable, because you just have to make sure that each coach has the chance to coach every swimmer on that team at some point, at least once per week, right? Even if the swimmer isn't there, they at least have the access to do that. And I think there's six, 5 or 6 benefits to doing that. The first is it gets back to what we initially talked about, was that coaching talent versus athlete talent, or the talent pool you have. If you really believe that every swimmer has the right, or has the right to quality coaching, if you really believe that you want to see every swimmer succeed, well, then you yourself have that moral obligation to try to reach out to them and coach them. And so if you want every coach to buy into that, if you only tell them you only have the 8 and unders, they're not coaching every swimmer because they only have the 8 and unders. If as the head coach, especially if I say, I really believe that every swimmer has the right to quality coaching, but yet I'm only interested in coaching our national level qualifiers, what's the message I'm sending everybody? Right? Well, the head coach only takes an interest in you when you get to a certain level, right? And so that's the first thing. Rotating coaching coincides with our overall, my coaching philosophy, and also with our overall team culture and team philosophy. And the second thing is that it's emotionally healthier for both coaches and swimmers. So I don't know if any coach out there has ever tried to spend a lot of time working with brand new 8 and unders, trying to teach them breaststroke kick. It can be very frustrating. One of the ways to stop coach from burning out is to make sure that they rotate, that every coach gets a chance to work with those high level swimmers, so that they kind of feel like, yeah, you know what I mean? I know this is what it feels like to, I get a break to work with. I could just say, we're going to do, 3 100s on the minute 20. We're leaving every 10. Make sure you alternate breathe and work your streamlines, and you can just say that and everybody gets it, and they can just go. As opposed to you try to say something like that, to a group of 8 and unders. All right, we're all going to do 8 25s on 40 seconds. We're going to leave every 10 seconds and make sure that you breathe every 3. You will get blank stares, and half of them wind up doing butterfly or backstroke or, doing doggy paddle, right? It'll be all over the place, right?
Right.
One, the benefit is it's emotionally healthier for the coaches. It leads to less burnout. And then 2, it's emotionally healthier for the kids, because, some kids like some coaches better than others. So, some kids, love, Coach Drake. Others are like, he's, I don't like the way he talks to me. He looked at me funny. He's too loud. He yells too much. Or it's just a matter of age. I'm 52 and, I'm not going to be able to make that connection, with that 11 or 12-year-old. I'm not going to know what music they're listening to. Even if I do, it's kind of weird for me to say to like an 11-year-old, hey, who are you listening to? Right. Whereas if you have like an 18 or 19-year-old assistant coach, or even somebody in their early 20s, they're going to come across as a little bit friendlier, a little bit more accessible. So it's healthier for the swimmers as well, because if you have just one coach to that group, to that training cohort, and it's not working for a couple of those kids, they hate that coach all season. And that coach, maybe they don't really, they're feeling it as well. They feel the lack of appreciation. So they're going to be a little bit negative towards those kids all season. And it's not a good thing for anybody. Whereas if they get a chance to rotate every couple of days, or at least once a week, everybody knows, well, at least next week, I'll get the coach I like, right? And the coach is like, well, at least next week, I'll get to work with the kids that I really click with better. 3, it raises the coaching of the entire program, because it really sort of becomes it turns by default into its own professional learning community. Because every time you go from group to group, coaches have to have that sort of pass-on report, right? To talk about, here's the sets we're doing, here's the yardage we're doing, here's what worked with, John, swimmer A or Johnny is struggling with this. Here's what clicked, here's what didn't click, here's what worked, here's what didn't work. We're at this set, we're at this level, we're at that set, we're at this pace or that level. And so it forces all the coaches to sort of talk to each other. So it creates that professional learning community. And then the next thing is too, it allows every swimmer to gain access to the strengths and weaknesses to every coach. Every coach brings with them strengths and weaknesses. And so rather than, if you have just one coach per training cohort, per age group, or per ability level, if they're really good at teaching freestyle, that's great. But if they're really weak in understanding how to teach breaststroke, well, if that's all they do for a season or two, you're going to end up with a whole group that can't do breaststroke that well. And then think about what happens. I'm the head coach. I'm doing the lineup. I'm like, I'm gonna look down at my assistant coach and say, hey, what's your problem? How come we have no, breaststrokers? What are you doing down there? Here? Right. So now it's just like, it's me looking down on them, blaming them for the lack of success for our team. So it's unfair for me to do that, right? Because have I shown a responsibility for those swimmers to learn breaststroke? Have I spent the time going down to that level and trying to teach that young coach how to teach breaststroke? Now, if I haven't done that, then it's just me. It's my frustration looking to blame the rec committee because they won't put the money towards fixing the pool. It's my frustration for, blaming the overall community because, they care more about wrestling or basketball or football. And all we get are we don't seem to get the A quality athletes. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you can blame the community. You can blame the assistant coaches. You can blame the why. You can blame, but at some point you're like, right, with the resources we have, how do we make this, the best that we can make it?
Right. How do we make it work instead of how do we complain that it doesn't?
Right. And even if you don't really ever get to the level you hope to get to as a program, you get that sense of, that pride, that sense of ownership that everybody has. And that's why it's also emotionally healthy for the assistant coach, emotionally healthier for the kids, because they're not getting frustrated day after day. They have some sort of sense of ownership and some sort of sense of connection to the kids who are maybe doing better. And then the third thing is something that you touched on before, that you pointed out, because every coach has spent time dealing with and coaching every swimmer, either if you have to give a little pep talk before the race, if you have to give some feedback after the race, you can engage every single swimmer, right? So that way it's not just, hey, I'm only going to, like, let's say if you're on deck and I'm busy talking to swimmer A and swimmer B just got done racing. I didn't see swimmer B's race. They're going to come up to me and I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't see your race. I have to do that often enough as it is, right? And I feel bad about it every time. But at least if I know there's 3 or 4 other assistant coaches there, or even if it's just one other assistant coach, that swimmer has somebody else to go to get some feedback, to say, hey, or even if it's just a high five, you know what I mean? Hey, great swim. Because, you know, if you got 100 kids on your team, you're not going to see everybody. You can't give everybody a high five. You can't give everybody personal one-on-one time. But if every coach knows every swimmer and every swimmer knows every coach, then there's a lot more of that going on. There's a lot more instruction, a lot more learning. And even if they're not improving for those small goals, which is like, how fast am I getting? They at least feel like they're still part of the team.
I feel like the rotating coaches is a we thing. It pulls
Yes.
us together versus an I thing so much. It's more of a we're a team. And I think you do a great job of creating teams.
Right.
And there's a lot of thought in it, and it's a lot of successful traction that you get building successful teams. And I really look at it, and I can just see it pouring throughout the team that there's always this respect for each other, and that's fantastic. It's a very healthy environment that you're creating.
Okay, thank you. Because I worry about that sometimes. You know, I think about, like, when I see it's not, if it's something isn't clicking for a swimmer, or it's a hard conversation with a parent, or as a coach, you have to make hard decisions, you know, for the levels we compete at, right? For the resources we have, for the lane space we have, for area, you look at the, you know, the geographic area that we're at, the, you know, the demographics, the economics, everything that goes into the over the larger structural challenges, you take a look at everything that we have. You know, for all the other teams that are in a similar boat as we are in this area, we tend to do better. And the reason why we do that is because I think of the rotational coaching that we do. Everybody's got buy-in. And then the last reason why I like rotational coaching is that it keeps everybody focused. If every coach knows they have to prepare and be ready for the next group coming up, nobody's bored. Nobody's standing around gossiping, looking on their phones. So, and I see myself sometimes, like, if I'm coaching the same group too often, I'm getting bored, right? I'm sitting back. I'm like, I send them off on their set. I might want to look at, I'm going to want to look at my phone, right? That addictive thing we all carry around, right? Or if there's another coach that that, when are we going to get a chance to talk? They're off swimming. Great. We're going to start gossiping. You know, what this parent said to me, blah, 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 right? But if we're rotating, we're already engaged in talking every time we have to rotate through. So it's not like that it's not a social thing. The coaches are already socially engaging and talking about swimming and talking about swimmers in a healthy way as opposed to a negative way. If we say that we value team, then it's not just what we say, it's what we do. It's not, we cheer as a team, we swim as a team, we sit as a team, and we coach as a team, right? It's not me versus you. It's not like, and again, I get this, like, I'm proud that, my group is doing great, but your group stinks, right? Then you're not building a team. Every coach feels that responsibility, right? That every coach feels that buy-in. Every swimmer feels that buy-in. You're actually, that's the last link. If you take a look at from your mission statement to the resources you have that are aligned to that, to the people you're hiring, to what you actually do on deck. We have to make sure that our coaches are doing on deck team-oriented things, which starts with the coaches themselves rotating as a team.
Okay, so now talk to us about process coaching versus responsive coaching, and how that ties in to the coaching talent versus athlete talent, and the talent pool, as well as the benefits of rotating coaches. How does that all work together?
So it gets to where the last thing we were referring to, which was, how do you make sure everything's aligned? And it's not just, so one of the last points of the alignment is the rotating coaching, but then the other point to the alignment is, what's your overall approach? So by process coaching, I mean, and you see this I think in all sports, it's not just swimming. The coach has a process. If you follow this process, you will be successful. Because that's what worked with swimmer A and swimmer B. That's what worked with swimmers 10 years ago. I don't understand why this isn't working out. If you are a process coach, you've sort of decided, I'm more of the scientific side of it. So I'm going to, here's the math, here's the sets, everybody needs to be doing this time at this week, this time at this week, this yardage at that week, this yardage at that week. And that's great. I'm a low yardage. We are a low yardage program. This is what we always do. We are a high yardage program. This is what we always do. We focus on just doing IMs. We focus on just freestyle sprints because that accounts for the most percentage of scoring points, at college or high school. So if that's your process, then you're going to wind up weeding out all the other swimmers. And you're going to end up with swimmers that are just only going to work for that process. But that kind of runs contrary to my coaching philosophy, which is every swimmer has the right to quality coaching. And so whether you're a swimmer that can show up for 6 days a week, 2 hours a day, you're willing to put in 8,000 yards a day, you never get hurt, you never get sick, you never get injured, great, that'll work. But if you're a swimmer whose parents can only get you there 2-3 times a week for 45 minutes, I got to make it work for them too. And that's where it gets into that responsive coaching. Yes, there are best practices. Yes, there are certain keys to every stroke that every swimmer should hit. But you also have to adjust from where you're at. If you wrote a practice, a workout, and it's not working, you have to be able to adjust right then and there in the practice, in the workout. And
So
you don't know that unless you're paying attention.
One size doesn't fit all.
Right, exactly. And it gets back to, like I was saying before, just, on our YMCA team, everyone from 5-year-olds to 19-year-olds, from I'm here just for my friends and have fun to I'm looking to get scholarship money, right? Everything from qualifying for nationals to, I'd be happy if I can just finish a 50 free. And they're all on the same team, right? And they're swimming in the same meet. And they may even be the same age group on the same relay team, right? Because that's what we have available to us, those resources, those swimmers, that talent pool. So rather than me as a coach say, I've got all these great ideas on deck about how to make swimmers better. But if I have the talent pool at the time where we have to rely on that one swimmer who just learned how to do 50 free last week, and he's got to be on there with a national level qualifier, I got to get them to connect, and I got to be able to coach them to the same ability. I'm not going to make excuses. And so that means is what I say to the national level qualifier and what I say to the brand new swimmer who just did a 50 free the first time last week, they might be on the same age group and the same relay but I have to be able to adjust and differentiate my approach to both of them. If this year I have a lot of kids who are really good at sprinting, what am I going to do to make them a more well-rounded swimmer? If I have an age group and they all seem to be pretty good at freestyle, but none of them can do butterfly that well, what's my response to that? I can't wait. Like I can't just use the same workout year after year after year. I might have a base that I copy and paste, but I have to modify every workout all the time. I might even need to modify it if it's not working right then and there in practice, right? You have to have a responsive coaching to what you're doing. This drill works great for this swimmer. I do this drill for every swimmer and it teaches everybody how to do butterfly better. But for this swimmer, it's not working. Well, now I got to come up with a different drill. I got to come up with a different approach. And then I got to pass that on to the next coach coming in because maybe they'll say it just a little bit differently than I will, and it'll click then.
So having a plan, having a, baseline, like you're saying, to make sure that you don't want to just go in there and kind of willy-nilly, just everybody, everything, but at the same time you have a plan, but then you've got to be able to adapt it. And for each individual, especially like you're saying, when you're dealing with young children and things like that are all over the place, and you don't have them in that one environment like a coach in college would have.
Right,
and
right.
Like mom and dad always miss Wednesday, and Wednesday's our sprint set.
Right.
Then they never get sprint.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I ran into. So that's what I was like, well, I have to, that's where the other thing is too, why we have a 4-week rotation. And I don't share that rotation with the kids because I don't want anybody saying, well, this is the butterfly day. This is butterfly distance day. So I'm going to skip that day. I don't want them knowing that. Right.
Right.
So, but it's a 4-week rotation so that whether we're doing IM, sprints, IM distance, free sprints, free distance, stroke sprints, stroke distance, whether we're focused on this technique, whatever it is, it's on a 4-week. At the end of those 4 weeks, if you're there, you'll get a touch of everything. But even within that, like in that terms of responsive coaching, one of the things where I feel like we've been successful in our dual meets, in our local championships at the summer level and at our division and league level at the YMCA, is because I'll look and I'm like, all right, so this year we have a lot of sprinters. So we're going to, and we're almost going to lose all the 200 events. Okay, fine. We're going to double down. We're going to rack up the points in the sprints, right? Or sometimes it's the opposite for the different age group. You know what? This team, this is what I have. This is who's here with us right now. So what's the best strengths how do we best promote our strengths? And that also gets into responsive coaching. Is not just what you do with the kids, what you do with the program, and what you do in the lineup at the dual meets, and are you training? And that also gets into the idea of that you just don't train everybody to be good at one thing. It's like when I hear somebody say, well, I'm just a backstroker. That annoys me as a teacher. Like, it's like somebody says, I stink at math. You know what I mean? All right, I'm only good at this. I'm like, no, you can be good at everything. It might take you more time to get there, but you can be good at everything. And that's what we're trying to train you to be, so that if we want you to be good at everything and we want you to be a multifaceted swimmer, then we also, as coaches, have to be good at everything in order to respond to whatever your needs are.